I found out my dad has a secret family, and my mom's epic revenge was unbelievable. The shocking truth and her ultimate payback will leave you speechless. You ever had one of those days that starts out totally normal, and then bam, your whole world flips upside down? Yeah, that was me a couple of months ago. I was just chilling at home, scrolling through Instagram, when I got a notification. It wasn't anything special, just one of those random friend suggestions. But the face on the profile pic looked weirdly familiar. It was like looking at a younger version of my dad. Curiosity got the better of me, so I clicked. What I found next left me stunned, confused, and honestly a little scared. This wasn't just some distant cousin or a long-lost relative. No, this was someone way closer to home, a brother I never knew existed, and that was just the beginning. Part 1. The Accidental Discovery. So, there I was, staring at this dude's profile, feeling like I'd just been hit by a truck. His name was Ryan, and the resemblance to my dad was uncanny. Same eyes, same nose, even the same lopsided smile. I couldn't shake off the feeling that there was more to this. I mean, we've all heard of doppelgangers, right? But this wasn't just a coincidence. I scrolled through his photos, and there it was. A picture of Ryan with his mom. But it wasn't just any mom. It was a woman I vaguely recognized from a couple of my dad's old work events. At first, I thought maybe she was just an old friend or something. But then I saw the caption, "Family vacation with mom and dad. #blessed dad." As in my dad? I felt my stomach drop. There was no way this could be real. I had to be missing something. Maybe it was just a really bad joke, right? But deep down, I knew something was off. I decided to do a little more digging. I clicked on Ryan's mom's profile, and that's when things got really weird. There were photos of my dad at birthdays, Christmases, and even random outings. He looked happy, like he belonged there. But how could that be? He was supposed to be with us. I was spiraling, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. My hands were shaking as I took screenshots and saved them in a folder. I needed proof, something to confront him with. I knew this was about to turn my whole world upside down. Part 2. Confrontation Prep. I couldn't just sit on this bombshell. My mind was racing with questions, and I needed answers. But I couldn't just barge into the living room and yell, "Hey Dad, who's your other family?" I needed to be smart about this. So, I did what any reasonable person would do. I called my best friend, Mia. Mia's been my ride or die since middle school. If anyone could help me figure this out, it was her. I explained everything, sending her the screenshots and trying to keep my voice steady. She was silent for a bit, probably just as shocked as I was. "Wow, I don't even know what to say," she finally muttered. "Are you sure it's not some kind of mix-up? I've been over their profiles a dozen times, Mia. It's him. There's no doubt." "Okay," she sighed. "So, what's the plan?" I hadn't gotten that far yet. I wanted to confront him, but I didn't know how. Mia suggested I gather more evidence, just to be absolutely sure before I dropped the bombshell. She was right. I didn't want to jump to conclusions and blow up my family over a misunderstanding. If there was even a sliver of a chance, that's what this was. So, I spent the next couple of days going full detective mode. I looked up old emails, dug through family photo albums, and even sneaked into my dad's office to check for anything suspicious. What I found made my heart sink even further. Receipts from trips he never told us about, cards from Ryan's mom, and worst of all, a whole second phone. It was like a punch in the gut. This wasn't just some innocent misunderstanding. It was real. My dad had a whole other life, a whole other family. And now, I had to figure out how to confront him without blowing everything to bits. Part 3. The Confrontation. Armed with all the evidence, I knew it was time. I couldn't keep this to myself any longer. My mom deserved to know, and my dad needed to explain himself. But how do you even start a conversation like that? "Hey Dad, so, about that other family you've got?" Yeah, that wasn't going to fly. I waited until we were all home one evening. My mom was in the kitchen and making dinner, and my dad was in the living room, watching TV. My heart was pounding as I walked in, holding the folder with all the evidence I'd collected. I couldn't wait for the perfect moment. There wasn't going to be one. "Dad, can we talk?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked up, surprised. "Sure, what's up?" I sat down across from him, placing the folder on the coffee table. My hands were clammy, and I could feel my face burning. I found something, and I need you to explain. His brows furrowed, and he reached for the folder, flipping it open. As he looked through the photos, the receipts, and the messages, his face went pale. He didn't say a word at first, just kept flipping through the pages like he was hoping it would disappear. "What is this?" he finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's what I want to know," I said, crossing my arms. "Who is Ryan? Who is she? And why are you in all these pictures?" My mom must have sensed something was up, because she walked in, wiping her hands on a towel. "What's going on?" I could see the panic in my dad's eyes. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. My mom looked from me to him and then down at the folder. She picked it up, her eyes scanning the contents. The room was dead silent, except for the sound of the pages turning. When she finally looked up, her face was a mix of confusion, hurt, and anger. "Is this true?" she asked, her voice trembling. My dad just sat there, head down, unable to meet her gaze. The silence was deafening. It was like the air had been sucked out of the room. My mom deserved an explanation, and so did I, but all we got was silence. Part 4. The Aftermath. The silence was unbearable. My mom stood there, clutching the folder like it was a lifeline, waiting for my dad to say something. Anything. But he just sat there, staring at the floor. It was like he'd been caught in a trap he couldn't escape from. "Answer me!" my mom finally snapped, her voice breaking. "Is this true? Do you have another family?" He looked up, eyes filled with regret. "Yes," he said quietly. "It's true." It felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. My mom staggered back a little, gripping the back of the couch for support. "How long?" she whispered. My dad rubbed his face, clearly struggling to find the words. "For about 10 years, he admitted. It wasn't supposed to get this far. I didn't know how to stop it." 10 years. That meant this had been going on for more than half of my life. My mom was shaking, and I could see the tears welling up in her eyes. "So, all those business trips, all those late nights, it was all a lie?" He nodded, looking completely defeated. "I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." "You didn't mean for it to happen?" my mom repeated, her voice rising. "You had a whole other family, and you didn't mean for it to happen? Do you know what you've done to us?" I felt a mix of anger and sadness. I couldn't believe this was happening. The dad I thought I knew was a lie. My family was a lie. I wanted to scream, to cry, but all I could do was sit there in shock. My mom wasn't done. She was hurt, yes, but she wasn't the type to just roll over and accept this. "You think you can just live 2 lives and not face any consequences? Well, think again." She turned to me, her eyes fierce despite the tears. "We'll get through this," she said, more to herself than to me. "But you," she pointed at my dad, "you're going to pay for what you've done." Part 5. Mom's Plan. After the initial shock wore off, my mom went into full-on survival mode. She was hurt, but she wasn't about to let my dad's betrayal break her. If anything, it lit a fire in her. That night, after my dad went to stay at a hotel, at her insistence, she sat me down at the kitchen table. "We're going to be okay," she said firmly, though I could see the pain in her eyes. "But I need to figure out what to do next." I nodded, still processing everything. "What are you going to do?" She took a deep breath, her jaw set. "First, I need to see a lawyer. I need to know what my options are. And then, well, let's just say your dad won't know what hit him." The next few days were a blur. My mom was a whirlwind of activity. She met with a lawyer, gathered financial documents, and started making plans. But she wasn't just thinking about the practical side of things. She wanted to make sure my dad felt the full weight of his actions. And boy, did she have a plan. One evening, after she got back from a meeting with her lawyer, she called me into the living room. "I need your help with something," she said, a mischievous glint in her eye. "What is it?" I asked, curious. "We're going to hit him where it hurts, his reputation." She explained that my dad was well respected in the community. He was involved in local charities, sat on a couple of boards, and had built a solid reputation as a family man. My mom knew that if the truth came out, it would destroy his image, and she wanted to make sure everyone knew who he really was. "I'm going to throw a party," she said, smiling slyly, And I'm going to invite all of his colleagues, his friends, even some of our family. And at the party, I'm going to show them exactly who your dad is." My eyes widened. "You're going to tell them everything?" "Not just tell them," she said. "I'm going to show them." She pulled out her phone and showed me a slideshow she'd put together. It was all the evidence I'd found, plus some extra bits she'd dug up on her own. Pictures, emails, texts, it was all there, laid out in brutal detail. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My mom was planning the ultimate revenge, and honestly, I was kind of here for it. Part 6. The Party Setup. The next couple of weeks were a whirlwind. My mom threw herself into planning the party like it was her mission in life. She rented out a nice venue, sent out invitations to everyone who mattered in my dad's world, and made sure every detail was perfect. The whole thing was disguised as a celebration of family and community, but we both knew what it really was, a reckoning. I was nervous, but also excited. My dad had no idea what was coming. He thought my mom was just throwing a party to smooth things over and keep up appearances. He even offered to help plan it, which my mom politely declined. "You just show up and enjoy yourself," she told him, with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The day of the party arrived, and the venue looked amazing. My mom had spared no expense. There were fancy decorations, catered food, and even a small stage for speeches. Guests started arriving, and I could see my dad working the room, shaking hands and laughing like everything was fine. He had no clue what was about to hit him. As the night went on, people mingled and enjoyed themselves, completely unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. My mom was calm and collected, greeting everyone and making sure everything was running smoothly. But when she caught my eye, I could see the determination behind her smile. This was it. Showtime. Part 7. The Big Reveal. The moment finally arrived. The guests had eaten, had a few drinks, and were happily chatting away. My mom took the stage, microphone in hand, and tapped it gently to get everyone's attention. The room quieted down, and all eyes turned to her. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she began, her voice steady. "It means so much to have you all here as we celebrate family and community. But tonight, I want to share something deeply personal." My dad, who was standing near the back with a drink in hand, started to look uneasy. He probably thought she was about to make some sentimental speech. He had no idea. My mom continued, "Family is the foundation of everything we do. It's what keeps us grounded, gives us strength. But sometimes we find out that what we thought was solid isn't." There was a murmur in the crowd. My dad's face had gone from uneasy to pale. He knew something was coming, but he couldn't leave now without making a scene. My mom clicked the remote, and the slideshow I'd helped her prepare appeared on the screen behind her. The first slide was a picture of my dad with Ryan's family. "This is my husband," she said, her voice cold and clear. "And this is the other family he's been hiding from us for over a decade." The room erupted into gasps and whispers. My dad tried to step forward, but it was too late. My mom clicked through the slides, pictures, emails, receipts, laying out the entire story in devastating detail. Each click of the remote was another nail in the coffin of his reputation. "I didn't do this to embarrass anyone," my mom said, looking around the room. "I did this because the truth matters, integrity matters, and it's time everyone knows who they're really dealing with." My dad looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. His friends, colleagues, and family were staring at him, some in shock, others in disgust. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Part 8. The Fallout. After my mom's bombshell presentation, the room was electric with tension. My dad's colleagues and friends started whispering among themselves, shooting him looks of disbelief and disapproval. He was frozen in place, his face a mask of shock and humiliation. My mom stepped off the stage, walking over to me with a calmness that was almost eerie. "Let's go," she whispered, gently taking my arm. We left the venue as the guests continued to murmur, and the reality of my dad's double life sank in. On the drive home, I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of emotions. Pride in my mom for standing up for herself, but also a lingering sadness. This was my family falling apart in front of my eyes, and no amount of justice or revenge could erase that. The next few days were a whirlwind. The fallout from the party was swift and brutal. My dad's phone was blowing up with calls and messages from everyone who had been there. Word spread quickly, and soon enough, his reputation was in shambles. He tried reaching out to us, but my mom wasn't having it. She told him he needed to find somewhere else to stay, and that she was moving forward with a divorce. I overheard one of their tense phone conversations. "You made your choice," my mom said firmly. "Now you have to live with the consequences." My dad didn't fight back much. He knew he had lost. Not just his family, but the respect of everyone around him. He moved out, and for a while, things were quiet. It felt like we were living in the aftermath of a storm, trying to pick up the pieces. Part 9. Picking up the pieces. Life after the big reveal was different. The house felt emptier without my dad around, but it also felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted. My mom, though still hurting, was moving forward with a determination I'd never seen before. She threw herself into her work and made sure I knew I could talk to her about anything. We were rebuilding, slowly but surely. I was still processing everything too. Some days I felt angry. Other days I just felt sad. I missed the version of my dad I thought I knew, but I couldn't ignore what he'd done. The betrayal cut deep, and it would take time to heal. My friends were supportive, especially Mia. She came over often, bringing snacks and keeping me distracted with dumb movies and endless TikTok scrolls. It helped, even if just a little. My dad tried reaching out a few times, sending messages that ranged from apologies to explanations, but I wasn't ready to talk to him. I wasn't sure if I'd ever be ready. How do you forgive someone who's been living a lie for so long? Someone who tore your family apart? Meanwhile, my mom was making plans. She didn't just want to move on. She wanted to thrive. She started looking into new hobbies, reconnecting with old friends, and even talked about taking a trip once the dust settled. She was determined not to let my dad's betrayal define the rest of her life. One night, she sat me down. "I know this hasn't been easy for you," she said, her eyes softening, "but I want you to know that we're going to be okay. It's just you and me now, and we'll make it through this together." Her words were comforting, but I still had a lingering fear. What if the damage was too deep? What if we couldn't fully recover? Only time would tell. Part 10. Moving forward. Months passed since the party, and while the scars from my dad's betrayal would never completely fade, life slowly started to feel normal again. My mom and I had learned to live with the new reality, and surprisingly, we were doing pretty well. My mom had built a new routine, started therapy to help her process everything, and even took that trip she'd been talking about. She was reclaiming her life, piece by piece, and it inspired me. As for me, I still didn't know if I'd ever forgive my dad. He tried, but his apologies felt hollow. The damage was done. I didn't want him back in my life like before, pretending everything was okay. The truth had shattered the illusion. But I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't have the energy for that. What I had was peace. And that was enough. One day I found an email from my dad in my inbox. It was a long letter, filled with apologies and promises to make things right. I read it, then closed it without responding. I wasn't ready to engage. Maybe one day I would, but for now, I needed space. I needed time to heal. Life went on. My mom and I were closer than ever, and we found new ways to enjoy each other's company. We took weekend trips, spent nights watching movies and eating ice cream, and talked about everything under the sun. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and it felt good. And as for my dad, well, the world had moved on from him. His career was in ruins, and his social circle had largely distanced themselves. He had no choice but to live with the consequences of his actions. My mom had already won her battle. Not just the fight for her dignity, but the fight for her future. She was thriving, and it was clear that nothing, not even my dad's betrayal, could hold her back. So, here's the thing. Life can throw some seriously crazy curveballs. The people you trust the most can betray you in ways you never thought possible. But even in the darkest moments, you can find the strength to move forward. My mom's revenge wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming her power, her voice, and her future. If you're going through something similar, remember that you're not alone. And don't let anyone tell you how to feel or how long it should take to heal. Take it one day at a time, surround yourself with people who support you, and know that eventually things will get better. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had a similar experience? How did you deal with betrayal in your life? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let's start a conversation. If you found this story relatable, hit that like button. Share it with someone who might need to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for watching, and remember, your story isn't over yet. You get to decide how it ends.